Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 305 Takes. And today, Angel and I are going to be here recapping everything we saw throughout this week 4. And, it's hard not to overreact when the game's just finished because, you have to take into account the bigger picture and all that. But we are here for the overreactions as me and Angel hopped on. It's Sunday night currently trying to get this episode in before the Sunday night football game, which I'm sure is going to be so exciting with uh, the Kansas City Chiefs traveling to New York or New Jersey, technically, to play the New York Jets. And um, so, just so you guys know, that's a little preface, just in case Taylor Swift catches a touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes tonight. We didn't get to see it before we recorded it, so don't shoot the messenger if we didn't talk about it on the podcast because I I wish there was a prop bet for how many times that she will be either on camera or mentioned during the broadcast of the Sunday night game because it has gotten pretty unbelievable with the amount of coverage this Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift relationship has gotten. But Angel, week 4 of the NFL season,
Week
and
four.
I think the best way to start it off, or not the best, depending on who you ask, especially when it's coming from me. But the Miami Dolphins traveled to Buffalo and faced the Bills. And I think I'm kind of to the point where I might just have to admit Josh Allen might be the Dolphins' dad, bro. He just might be the Dolphins' dad. Listen to these stats. Josh Allen, the last 3 games against the Miami Dolphins: 42 for 63, 400 yards, 2 touchdowns; 25 for 40, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns; 21 for 28, 320 yards, and 4 touchdowns. In his last 3 games, he's 88 of 131, completion percentage of 68%, 1,024 yards, and 10 touchdowns just against the Miami Dolphins. And today he had as many touchdown passes as he had incompletions in the game, 4. And I I know it's just the Dolphins' first loss, but God, it was a punch in the face. I mean, this is now 2 out of the 4 performances this year where the Dolphins defense just has been an absolute no-show, and the offense has been able to do whatever they want. Week 1, it was more of the passing game, even though Herbert had a really good game as well, but Eckler really got off in that game, and then in this one, it was basically just Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, just classic throwback performance for them, where you're like, okay, they might be the best quarterback wide receiver tandem that we have right now. And I don't know what the Dolphins do other than try to fix it schematically and hopefully not have another matchup where uh, Cater Kohu ends up as the primary assignment for Stephon Diggs. But that was a tough game. What were your thoughts from that just beat down by the Buffalo Bills?
I was really shocked. I really thought this game would be like a 34-31 type of game, considering what I saw last week. But like you said, credit to Josh Allen. I mean, this was one of his better games. This probably might end up being his best game of the year because at the end of the day, he didn't have any turnovers. He didn't fumble the football. He didn't throw a pick, which is which is very, very good on his end. And like you said, Cater Kohu, I mean, wherever Josh Allen saw him, that's where he was throwing that ball to. So credit to the Bills because they did find a weakness in that pass defense and they exploited it to the fullest. And I think the whole game was kind of explained on that one play when he hit Diggs. It was Kader Kohu tries to tackle him. You have the safety come in. He tries to help, and Diggs just got free and he just ran for a touchdown for 54 yards. That was one heck of a play by him. And I think that play kind of summed up the whole game because everything went the Bills' way. And then also on the part of for their defense, they were able to get to Tua, which was something we talked about in praise because that we were worried or had concerns about their offensive line for the Dolphins going into the season, just how will it help Tua? And just the Bills were the right matchup for them. The Bills were the right matchup. They were able to get to Tua pretty easily today, at least make some pressures, have him release the ball quick, and then to really slow down and have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have a slow day. I mean, Tyreek Hill, 3 catches, 58 yards. Jalen Waddle, 4 catches, 46 yards. Both of them on 5 targets. They really made the primary target of the whole game felt like Braxton Berrios or Raheem Most.
Yeah, I was super disappointed with that. To the fact that Tyreek Hill only finished with 5 touches in the game. He had the 4 catches, like you mentioned, then he had one rushing attempt, and
Hmm.
I was surprised that he, especially with what we've seen, I think he was coming into the game averaging something like 137 yards per
Yeah.
contest going in, and he finishes, with a pretty pedestrian game when you look at stat output. And I know they lost Armstead in that game, and I want to know what the injury status is going to be with him because he went straight to the locker room when the trainers went to go see him on the field. And then going into the game, they had Liam Eichenberg as the starter, replacing Connor Williams, and it was Eichenberg's first game as a starter. And surprisingly, I think this is the best game we've had as far as offensive snaps, even though there was a little bit of a high one in the first half. But it was just really surprising because it seemed like, all right, it's going to be like the Chargers game where it's like whose defense is going to make the one play needed or whose team is going to have the ball last. And because from the opening drive they were just answering back to each other. The Bills, their first drive went 75 yards for 8 plays, and then the Dolphins got the ball first, or their first possession they went 77 yards in 7 plays. So it seemed like a heavyweight fight where it was just going to be both teams going back and forth, and it was, until 14-14. And then the Dolphins, who got 142 yards and 2 touchdowns on the first drive, 35 yards and 0 first downs for the rest of the half. For the rest of the half, 35 yards after their first two drives of the game. And then they open up the third quarter. They find Braxton Berrios for the touchdown. So it was 11 plays, 75 yards. So, there are these long sustained drives, even with backup offensive linemen in there. So you can't really look at that as an excuse. They were just not the better team. And I think it simply comes down to the defense wasn't able to make any stops. And I looked this up before we started recording. Take a wild guess how many tackle for losses Bradley Chubb has had since becoming a Miami Dolphin. He has 37 for his career. And since becoming a Dolphin, how many do you think you have? You're on mute. How many do you think he's had since coming over?
I'm gonna say probably 7. I've seen him get near the quarterback, but when it comes to tackle for losses, I haven't seen him really help in that department. It's mainly Wilkinson. It's mainly Wilkins.
So his first game as a Miami Dolphin was week 9 of last season against the Chicago Bears. And his first 3 games as a Dolphin did not have a tackle for loss. In his fourth game, he amassed 1 tackle for loss.
Okay, so 1.
The rest of the season, he had 0. This year, first game against the Chargers, 1 tackle for loss. Against New England, 2 tackles for loss. And he has had 0 since. So that means he's had 4 tackles for losses since becoming a Miami Dolphin player.
Yeah.
And that is somebody we traded a first round pick for, a first round pick that ended up coming back to bite us because ours was taken away from us in the whole tampering situation. So, and that's not just to point out to Bradley Chubb. It's just, Jalen Phillips, we had really high expectations going into this year, and especially with the combination of Chubb and Wilkins up front, and with them re-signing Zach Sealer, you thought, okay, this is like the foundation for our defensive line moving forward. But Phillips has been battling injury. He missed the New England game. Van Ginkel performed really well. 2 sacks today or Van Ginkel. So it's like, do we really know? Are we playing the right personnel on defense? Kader Kohu had a really good year as a undrafted free agent last year when we dealt with a lot of secondary injuries. But then you have an active Xavier Howard, who me and you mentioned on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, saying, okay, if we're going to nitpick about the Dolphins, is Xavier finally taking a step back? He's been a really productive cornerback in this league for a long time. Me and you have enjoyed some of the, let's say, online rumblings about what Xavier does in his personal life. We'll keep that to the
Yeah,
Twitter
that's
Spaces.
he can live his life. That's
You
not
guys
for us
can
to
search
judge.
that on you can search his name on X if you're interested in finding more. But it's curious about the personnel because I know Jalen Ramsey was supposed to be a big piece of this puzzle, but obviously he's not here. And they went out and try to sign Eli Apple to help that. We saw him kind of get picked on by a bad Patriots passing offense in the game in Foxborough. So I don't know what they can really do outside of making a move for a player that's not currently on the roster, or just hoping that they can figure it out until Ramsey gets back. And then that's assuming a lot of Ramsey to be back and 100% in shape and back to his his form as they go on along in the season, coming off a meniscus injury. So I am a little worried about the defense as we move forward. I mean, I mentioned the stats about Josh Allen. Obviously, Herbert, you can't be mad at that one because he's an extremely talented quarterback. But if the offense doesn't go absolutely insane in Denver, we could be looking at a different ball game. If the Broncos don't fumble the ball 3 times, could be looking at a different ball game. And then, you look at how New England looks against Dallas today, and you're like, well, they didn't really look like that against the Dolphins.
No, they didn't. They played a lot better that day, a lot better, and it kind of makes you question. It's like, all right, how good is this Dolphins defense? And then obviously, like you said, with Jalen getting hurt, that was a big, big blow to the defense because outside of Jalen Ramsey, they really didn't make moves on the defensive side because they were very limited with draft picks and then the signing on money, what they can do, because you already have Tyreek Hill tied to a contract. You have Bradley Chubb tied to a contract. Then you got to pay Javon Holland soon. Jalen Waddle's coming up. Tua didn't get to sign his extension.
Wilkins,
And
one of the big
and
ones that was holding out from camp too. Yeah.
yep, and Wilkins. And so there's a lot of guys that need to be paid. So I had no problem with the Dolphins not really spending a splurge on free agency because you have other guys to pay down the pipeline. So I had no issues with that. But I do think the Dolphins can get back on track because their next 2 games is the New York Giants. I haven't really seen what I like from the Giants. I don't like their offensive line that much. Their defense, I think their defense is solid, but I do believe I don't think they have the speed to compete with the Dolphins. So I think that can help them. The Panthers, the Panthers are 0-4 right now for a reason. So we'll see how that one game goes. I do favor the Dolphins a lot. And then this is when they would get into a really tough stretch. They play the Eagles, who looked great today against the
Yeah.
Commanders,
In
but it
Philadelphia
was
too
only
for Sunday Night Football.
but their offense looked good. Their defense didn't look that great. Then they have to play the Patriots again. This time it will be in Miami. I actually like the Dolphins a lot in that matchup because they get rid of a division opponent early. And after today, with the whole Mac Jones not looking great in Dallas, who knows what the quarterback situation will look like in New England. So I do think that game favors them. But then they play the Chiefs
In Germany.
in Germany. So there's no home field advantage. So I think that's actually a fair point for both of them. So they can't really say home crowd was a factor. So it's truly all right, who can match up well with who. And it will be tough. At least a good thing for the Dolphins after that, there is their bye, and then they could go on a nice stretch against the Raiders.
Yeah, and they only
It's
have five. They only have 5 road games for the rest of the season. I mean, they
yeah,
got off. They started their first 2 games on the road this year, and then obviously this
they
week they
played
played at
already their
Buffalo.
third road game. So
Yeah, so that will help out. And one of those road games, like you said, will be neutral site as it'll be played in Germany. But it's just even more frustrating because you look at the game that you get from Etienne, where he has 8 carries and gets 100 yards, 12.6 yards per carry,
but one
and
of
two
those runs
touchdowns.
was like a massive run. So I can't
Yeah,
really say how great he was, but a limited amount of touches.
I mean, he still had a really good game,
Yeah.
12 yards a carry, and he's got 6 touchdowns in his last 2 games, which is just crazy. So it's not like you can really point out one thing that the offense did wrong. I mean, I would have liked to see the passing game play a little bit more efficiently. Like I said, I thought it was curious that you only got Tyreek Hill you have 4 receptions, right?
3 catches.
Yeah. So 3 catches. Yeah. Only targeted 5 times. Waddle targeted 5 times, 4 catches, 46 yards. And then you look at Barrios. Barrios is targeted 6 times. So, and you look, Durham Smythe targeted 4 times. Raheem Mostert
I
targeted
mean,
five
the
times.
ball
So,
was being distributed everywhere, so that part was good. But it was the only thing. It was just like, man, they really if somehow a team is able to shut down the speed of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, it really becomes a different Dolphins team. But like we said, I feel like after these Nets like 5 games, I really like their schedule and how it favors them. The Raiders, the Jets, the Commanders, the Titans, the Jets again. Then they play Dallas on Christmas Eve. I think that's the only tough game they have. and then they have Baltimore. And by that time, depending on the playoff seeding and their record, who knows if they have clinched a playoff berth by that time. So they wouldn't have to worry too much about losing that game. So it's definitely something to look at. But I mean, this happens to every team. There's going to be a week where it's just not your week, and there's just things went your way. We could say last week everything went Miami's way when they scored 70, and this week not many things went their way. A lot of bad protection plans for Tua. Uh, Diggs was just head hunting at corner today, and I was kind of shocked how we even talked about it. You figured Xavier would try to, shadow him, considering he knows Diggs. You played him twice a year for the past 3 or 4 seasons. You figured you would at least travel with him. It's like, no, I got this. I'll play man. But hey, that's the NFL. Any given Sunday, something can happen. So one week you can score 70, the next week you might not even score at all. But at least the Dolphins' offense still looks very good. I still think they look very good. They just ran into a good team. That always happens.
Yeah, so that I think depressed enough recapping that one. So let's move on and let's move to the AFC North because I have so many questions about this division. I guess the Ravens are in control of their own destiny despite missing starter after starter after starter going into this game against Cleveland. And then Cleveland, Deshaun Watson makes his proclamation on Friday saying that he's good to go. And the next thing you know, we wake up on Sunday and the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns will be Dorian Thompson Robinson, DTR for sure. And, he had a good preseason, so I was excited to see him going into this game. But then the Ravens handled that very convincingly. Then you go on to the Pittsburgh Steelers playing the Houston Texans today, only scoring 6 points. They lose 30-6 to the Texans. They're now 2-2. And then the Bengals lose 27-3 on the road to the Tennessee Titans, and they're now 1-3 on the season. So out of all the teams in the AFC North, you pick and we'll just go from there.
Honestly, man, I'm just, the Bengals one. I know some parts of injuries are hurting the team, mainly Joe Burrow, but the one team that just makes me like go, how? It's the Steelers, bro. Like how? I want to read the games and the schedule for everyone right now of the Pittsburgh Steelers because coming into the year, we all had pretty high hopes for Kenny Pickett and this offense. You figured you know, it would be a lot better. It's the second year under the offense for Kenny Pickett. George Pickens' his second year. Deontay Johnson has another year to work with Kenny Pickett. And Kenny Pickett had a full offseason to work with them. And then you figured Najee Harris would be better. They lose their opening game 30-7 to the 49ers. They barely beat Cleveland 26-22.
And
They
that's
beat
with two defensive touchdowns.
with 2 defensive touchdowns. You beat the Raiders, and Jimmy G handed a lot of those plays to you. And then now you play the Texans, which for anyone that remembers, the Texans had the second overall pick for a reason last year. They had the second overall pick for a reason, and they got stomped out 30-6. I mean, not to say anything about Houston, it's just Houston, in my eyes, does not have a good football team. They have some nice young players and some solid pieces that you can have on a team, but what I say, it's like star power. Do I see them as Houston Texans as a playoff team? No, I don't see that at all. And for a lot of people, the Steelers were a sleeper pick this year to sneak into the playoffs, at least get in as a wild card, probably the 7th or the 6th seed. And they look bad. If their defense is not like getting turnovers or anything, I don't like this team at all. And then today, on top of it, Kenny Pickett gets an injury. So I just don't know what to do because I don't know how many games you can win when Kenny Pickett misses time and your quarterback is Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, and when the offense is already struggling and you're faced with that reality. And going into this game, Kenny Pickett in 16 career games had a 9-7 record, 3,000 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And 16 career games he's passed for 11 touchdowns. And then today, scoring 6 points, you're not unless you got one and didn't get the extra point. He did not throw a touchdown pass today. So it's just it is frustrating because, like you said, I think on defense they're absolutely amazing, and we saw them basically win that Cleveland game. And then you go up against the Texans team, like you said, they're young, they're scrappy, they're fighting, but you give up 168 yards to Nico Collins. 168 yards to
Nothing
Nico
against
Collins.
Nico. We respect all the NFL players, but when you look at like top receivers, we don't name Nico Collins.
But when he has 100 yards,
Yeah.
you don't start doubling him when he gets targeted 9 times and has 7 receptions. Like he's getting off on you guys. Like there's no change of game plan. Like you have a great safety in Minka. He can't shadow over the top. And you look at the rest of their offense, it was 42 yards for Dalton Schultz, at least through the passing game. 42 yards for Schultz, 27 yards for Pierce, 11 for Singletary, 26 for Robert Woods, 16 for Tank Dell, 22 for John Michie. So majority of their passing yards came from Nico Collins.
Yeah.
And it's a rookie quarterback. So it's like, okay, there wasn't anything we were doing to make him feel uncomfortable. He was able to do whatever he wanted back there. And then you look at this game, Trubisky is 15 of 23 for 114 yards. 114 yards. 114 yards. Like it sometimes like you just look at these teams and you're like, how did they play 4 quarters and only end up with this amount? And the Texans just dominated them in this game. The Texans had 32 minutes of time of possession, ran 69 plays compared to the 56 plays that the Steelers ran, had 451 total yards of offense compared to 225 offensive yards for the Steelers. The Texans won this game and had 8 penalties for 63 yards. 8 penalties for 63 yards. And the
It,
Steelers. I mean, it just has to be frustrating because
yeah.
when you look at it, you get a steal in getting off of Claypool early. You get the first pick of the second round of this year's draft. You think you have a solid foundation around Pickett, Pickens, Najee Harris, and Jalen Warren, which I get that Najee has definitely not been as impactful as we thought he would, especially coming off that rookie year and what we saw in Alabama. But I do think there is something to teams having 2 weapons like a Najee and a Jalen Warren, where that it doesn't matter. You don't have to rely on them, which I think it should be a whole point for a team that you don't have to rely on one back. But it's just not working out, and it's a shame because defensively they're
They're
pretty
great.
excellent, even though today didn't show it, but they made the Texans really look like a team that could sneakily be in playoff contention as we go down. And I think that's a huge testament to what they did in this offseason, making a big decision and trading back up into the first round after drafting CJ Stroud to get Will Anderson. They draft Tank Dell this year, who had a big game last week, not this week. Then you look at one of their younger receivers in Nico Collins going off for a huge game. So I do like what they're building, and they have a rookie coach in D'Amico Ryan. So the Texans might be one of those teams where it's going to be fun to watch them now because in a couple of years, people are going to be all over their bandwagon.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're looking at it now. I mean, I would say the Steelers were definitely up there for me as like the top team. The only other team that still makes me just go, man, this is crazy because I didn't think this coming into the year. I mean, like how we text about it, the Bengals, man. I just didn't know. It kind of just shows now they probably didn't. Joe Burrow did rush himself back prematurely because teams are just blitzing him like crazy, and he knows he could barely move with his calf injury. So he's trying to get rid of the ball quick. And then to see Jamar Chase's interview today, how he just says, "I'm open. I'm always effing open."
Yeah,
And
and then you see Joe Mixon say, "Do you see who we have at quarterback? Do you see who we have in the backfield? Do you see the weapons we have to throw it to?" Okay, so then what are you guys doing all game?
yeah,
Like you had that going into this matchup too.
yeah, it's just bad at this point. And how I told you this year, I thought this was the Bengals like last year to truly compete for Super Bowl. That I don't even know if they'll be able to compete for the playoffs because I'm like, if you guys perform like this the next 3 games, your season's over.
Well, I mean, the thing that's gonna probably end up working out for them is that they might just look into a top 10 pick and have another chance to add to an already talented core. But I mentioned it to you a couple of episodes ago where I was like, I wonder what the alternate universe looks like if the Raven, I mean, if the
Burrow's
Bengals
injury.
draft Penny
They
Sewell
saw.
over Jamar Chase, and then you look at today where Tennessee is just able to dominate the line of scrimmage against this Bengals team, and it really should be embarrassing for a team with all this talent on offense to just walk away with a game with 3 points,
Yeah.
especially against a Titans defense that hasn't really scared anybody all season. You look at what the Chargers were able to do a couple of weeks ago to them, and it's just
Even the
it's
defense for the Titans is I don't even think they're that good. And the offense, Derrick Henry has not looked good outside of this one game, and I didn't even think Derrick Henry had a very good game at all.
he
Personally,
was just outfit. They were just out physicaling them. They were
yeah,
by the time he was getting hit, he was already 4 or 5 yards downfield. And you know how he is once he gets a head of steam. It's pretty much impossible to stop him at that point. And I mean, as a team, the Titans rushed for had 33 carries for 173 yards, 5.2 yards per carry.
yep. I mean,
Like
here this
that's
stretch,
embarrassing. They on third down, the Titans were 8 of 13 on third down alone.
that's what I was going to bring up, the third down, and then here the Nets couple of games for them. They play Arizona next week. Arizona obviously not the best team, but they've been better than what we've seen, well expected. Then they play Seattle. We're going to see how Seattle does tomorrow night against the Giants, which for anyone watching this will be tonight. Then they have a bye, so at least they get some rest. But then here they stretch of games. They have the 49ers, they have the Bills, they have the Texans, who we just talked about, Baltimore, and then Pittsburgh. And then going in the first game of December, they have Jacksonville. Out of all those games, I really maybe see them. I could see them maybe winning one or two, maybe.
Yeah, and they're already at 1-4. Their one win is a 3 point win over the Rams who are in the NFC. So they've lost two games to divisional opponents in the Ravens and the Browns. And they just lost another one to a conference opponent in the Titans. So they're gonna basically have to be pretty flawless the rest of the season if they even want a chance at the playoffs because they don't control their own destiny already this quickly and with three conference losses and two division losses. So, and it's
It's
for a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Like this is starting to shake out as a season for hell with them for them because you started off with Joe Burrow getting the contract and then he gets injured in OTAs and then you look at it like you said. I thought you can say what you want. I agreed with Chase about always being open. I get him, but it's not like he wasn't getting targeted in this game. Like
yeah,
that's the thing. He still had a solid game. He didn't have the yards. He had 73 yards and 7 receptions, but he still had 9 targets.
yep.
So okay, yeah, you are always open and they threw you the ball 9 times. I mean, Joe Burrow had 40 completions. So almost 30% of the time he was throwing Jamar Chase's way. Like I don't know how much more you could want outside of that.
And we talked about is the going into offseason, do they trade T. Higgins, probably get some O-line help? Because you have two good receivers. You can't pay both of them because once you pay both of them and then you pay Joe Burrow, what money do you have to spend for the rest of the team? Obviously, teams can manipulate the salary cap, but still, like I feel like if you were to trade T. Higgins, now is the time. So at least maybe you could get some offensive line help or at least more draft capital to get as many offensive linemen as you can. Because I do feel like there would have been teams that would have offered at least a first round pick for T. Higgins that needed it. One a team I thought could have offered it, the Chicago Bears. I thought they needed a receiver,
Yeah,
but
but they
they went
traded
and
for
got DJ
DJ. Yeah,
Moore.
yeah.
And if not, Houston. I felt maybe Houston has a lot of capital, draft capital, and if you could sneak something out of them, but the Bengals have it just like you said, this might go down as a season to forget for them because they're obviously off to a terrible, terrible start. And they are in a massive hole now that's going to be almost near impossible to dig out of. If they make the playoffs after starting 1-3, I'm going to be shocked. I will. Because like how you said, with right now, the Ravens have basically half their roster injured. Half of their roster is injured, but they're still winning games. They're winning. So credit to them, but man, I just the Bengals I just don't know what to say. I really don't.
Yeah, and it's just one of those shake your head teams because we see the talent that they do have offense, and they just weren't able to execute it at all. Just at all. 3 points from that type of talent, and it's like, all right, they have no ability to run the ball, which is not going to help when our quarterback's not 100%. And then they don't really have the ability to, pass block. And he was only sacked 3 times in this game, but it was 10 quarterback hurries. And it's
And
like,
this is
okay,
with
like,
them bringing Orlando Brown Jr. to the team.
yeah, so well, I am fascinated to see how the Bengals end up shaping up the rest of the season. But that's our AFC North coverage as far as it goes for Week 4. And yeah, like you said, shout out to the Ravens who were missing a bunch. I'm trying to find the exact tweet from Adam Schefter with all the guys missing, but I can't pull it up right now. I'm only finding for last week's Colts game where they had Odell Beckham Jr. out, who didn't play today, Justice Hill, Marlon Humphrey, Ronnie Stanley, Tyler Linderbaum, Odafe Afe, and Marcus Williams. And
Yeah,
that's
that
not
sounds like
even
all of them.
that's not even the mentioning the people that were missing this week. So shout out to Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens for being able to squeak that one out. And that's like that game is literally like AFC North football. I know DTR didn't have the greatest of games and threw a couple of interceptions, but the Browns are an interesting team to think about as you move forward too, because basically their best offensive player in Chubb suffered a pretty devastating injury. Watson hasn't looked that great this year, and he missed this game. So it'll be interesting to see how they also shake out because it's not like they have the skill power out wide. Like they truly believe that Watson can be the difference maker, and that's why they gave him the fully guaranteed contract. So he's going to have to step it up for them if they expect to return to the playoffs this season. But let's keep it going here on 305 takes, and we'll move on to our last storyline of the week 4 in the NFL season. So we've seen 4 weeks of football, Angel. What are the teams that you can confidently say that you legitimately trust this season?
Honestly, it's probably only the 49ers if I'm truly being honest. I feel like Dallas I could trust, but I just don't like how their offense looks. Their offense does not look good. Like it doesn't look good. I understand Mike McCarthy's calling plays now, but I really do think that offense misses Kellen Moore to an extreme because they're not good. Like, yeah, they're getting to the red zone, but they're only getting field goals. They're not getting touchdowns. They barely get touchdowns. So I would say the 49ers, they're the only consistent team that I see here because the Chargers, I feel like they're very up and down. Texans don't see anything. Steelers don't see anything. Raiders don't see anything. The Panthers, I mean, they're pretty consistent with the outcomes of their games. So maybe I could confidently say that. The Vikings, no idea what version I'm going to see every week. The Eagles, I do think the Eagles' offense is getting better every week, but their defense is not what it was last year. Now you can really attack the middle of the field on that defense. That you can attack if your quarterback just has a little bit of time to throw and you have guys that can get open at a pretty good alarming rate, you can actually put some points up against the Eagles. So I do think the Eagles are not as trustworthy as they were last year. And the rest of the teams here, and I see flaws in almost all of them, or at least there's a glaring flaw. And this is not even saying the Chiefs, because I do think the Chiefs have flaws, because I think they don't have a consistent pass catcher. That's not Kelsey. And I mean, their defense is playing better, but I also have seen the opponents that they played outside of Detroit. They haven't really played anybody that good. So I can't say their defense is elite. So yeah, I would just say the 49ers are the only consistent team. If not, a consistent team is probably the Bears, like just losing.
Consistently bad.
Yeah. Like that's the
I
only consistent.
I have to push back on you a little bit. I'm gonna go Cowboys and 49ers. I agree with you. The Cowboys offense hasn't been the juggernaut that it probably should be, or closer to the juggernaut that it should be, but that defense is legit. And even without Trayvon Diggs, and I know that's a big loss for them, the pass rush and their ability to get home is pretty incredible. And it's been 4 weeks, and every week their defense is scoring a touchdown or making a play on special teams. So I think I know it's almost blasphemy to say this and to trust in the Dallas Cowboys because trust me, somehow, some way they are going to let you down. And I'm not even saying that as a fan. I'm just saying that as someone that likes to laugh at them. So I know it's going to come at some point, but based off of everything I've seen and including the loss to the Arizona Cardinals, which is classic Cowboys letting you down. I still think they're one of the teams that you can confidently say you trust. And then, I mean, I I feel a little queasy about saying this because I feel like I could be cold taked on Twitter or X later, but I think considering that they're 3-1 with and missed Mark Andrews in one of the games and haven't had Odell Beckham with since week one, I think the Baltimore Ravens are a team that we can trust. We know how the game will shake out. They're going to play you tough. They're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to use their linebackers. They're going to blitz a lot. They're going to put their guys in man-to-man coverage, and they're still going to try to pound the rock on offense and play off the play action after that. But they've been able to
Win.
win games, and they don't. You can say whatever about the playing style and how pretty it is and how consistent it is. It doesn't matter. They're able to get a W in the score column. So, and if you look at their schedule the rest of the year, I mean, I kind of like it. So the next 2 weeks they go at Pittsburgh, which will be a tough game because AFC North, that's all they know. Then at Tennessee, which we already know the bad blood. This is a 9:30 a.m. kickoff, so I'm assuming it's in London. Might be somewhere else. I don't know. It might be in Spain for all I know because it seems like the NFL wants to play games on all the continents in the world, including that Toy Story edition game that they played in London today. And did you know that the Jaguars are staying in London because they
Yeah,
play
they have
next
a
weekend?
week against the Bills. I think
So,
that's a big advantage for the Jaguars. They get
of
accustomed now to
course,
the
they
time
might as
zone.
well just become the London Jaguars at this point. Like I didn't even understand that. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they've played there for at least what 4 or 5 years in a row because remember the Dolphins played
The
uh
first
the
game, the
the
very
Dolphins
first
played the
game.
Jaguars there, and that was when Urban Meyer was the coach and was his first victory of his NFL coaching career.
Career.
So
I remember that because I texted you and then I texted a couple of people just for and you all of you were like, bro, how did we lose to the Jags? And this is with Urban Meyer in that terrible
exactly.
stint. So
Yeah. So that and I mean, you look at this Ravens team and they didn't even really do anything necessarily special today to win this game. Lamar went 15 of 19, which I mean, okay, great. He threw 78% of his passes complete, but 165 yards, 8.7 yards per attempt, 11 yards per completion, two passing touchdowns, both to Mark Andrews. And they were able to run the ball 33 carries for 131 yards, four yards per carry, two rushing touchdowns. They
a
were
big
just kind
pickup for
of
them has been Melvin Gordon. He's been very good for them.
Melvin Gordon was good for them, and they've already dealt with J.K. Dobbins going down, and they're already dealing with having to do the rotation of Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, and Melvin Gordon. So if they can make an addition there, and we'll see what happens with Jonathan Taylor. I'm not saying that they have to go out and do that, but we've seen them in the past go out and make trades in mid-season, whether it's Roquan Smith, whether it's Marcus Peters. So they're definitely not a team that is afraid to upgrade when they think that they have a legitimate shot to compete. So I, I'm not saying I fully trust them, but I do fully trust that we will know what type of game we get from this team. And I think that's very important as, there's still teams out here that are looking for their identity. And that's, I think, a really scary thing for teams is that you don't know which team is going to show up. And, for my favorite team, I'm worried about that with the defense. I don't know which defense is going to show up.
But you do know what game is happening next weekend, right? Cowboys 49ers. That game is happening
Ooh,
next week.
that'll be a fun one. That'll
That
be a fun one. In
we're
San
gonna
Francisco?
see. Believe so. I'll have to check the schedule again, but that game is next week. I know because I know we're gonna talk about this in a little bit. Fantasy wise, Edwin in our league tried to trade me the 49 the Cowboys defense for the Saints defense.
Yeah, Cowboys at 49ers next week, Sunday Night
And I
Football.
was scared for that simple reason. I was like, okay, I don't mind the trade, but I don't like how they play the 49ers next week. That's my fear. And after that, they have the bye. So I was like, am I going to get like 2 weeks of no production from the defense? Where in our league for the scoring now for the defense, it helps. It really helps. So All right, guys, just got a little text from Miles. So, uh, he's having a little bit of internet problems, but that's perfectly fine. I will continue for a little bit until he comes back. Uh, so one thing we do also wanted to talk about was fantasy. So for any fantasy owners out there, today there was a big games from not only Christian McCaffrey, who had 48 points, almost 50, depending on the scoring in your league, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Josh Allen, Puka, Nuka from the Rams, all of them had over 30 points, with David Montgomery getting 30 points on Thursday night. And it's quite unreal for a weekend of so many people having 30 points. I mean, I'm happy because in one of my leagues, I have two of them. I have AJ Brown and Stephon Diggs. They really helped me because, man, I needed every point. The score in the league that I'm playing in against Ryan, the score is 177 to 145. He finished all his players. And then me, if I didn't have Diggs or AJ Brown, I feel like I would have lost. I mean, you gave me a good game. Mark Andrews gave me a good game. T. Higgins went out. That makes me sad, but it's fine. And then on Miles's end, Miles had a week. He had Christian McCaffrey and Jalen Hurts, which basically won him the game. It won him the game, and this is with him also having Deebo Samuel. It's quite unreal because Deebo only gave him 0.6. So I'm curious, but we're gonna talk more about that later on when we have Miles back on. So guys, I will let you go for tonight. When Miles gets his technical issues good, we'll put out another part of it just for fantasy. So we'll get more into a deep dive of it. So until next time, guys, peace.